narrative. And they are, again, projecting. They'll be the first to tell you. They've been wrong before. They'll be wrong again. But by and large, they have been marvelous at weaving these words, this data, into a narrative and laying it out in the reports. So let me start with this. We'll pick it up right below markets. This is part 6 of the current and now completed ALTA report. The imagery coming from the newly processed immediacy data and focused on next week and beyond through an additional 2 weeks goes to the idea of, quote, desperate hands, which will, quote, grip the markets, that's another quote, in a seizure. So just in this sentence, I'll read it again. The imagery coming from the newly processed immediacy data and focused on next week and beyond through an additional 2 weeks goes to the idea of desperate hands which will grip the markets in a seizure. Again, the words desperate hands, grip, markets, and seizure. And I'll continue. This last can also be interpreted as the secondary level as, quote, grasp, enclosure, restrictions, end quote, and other descriptors. So the words again, grasp, enclosure, restrictions, and other descriptors, all of which are participatory within the, quote, restrictions on movement, metadata layer. Restrictions on movement. It's another phrase they brought back from the research. The immediacy data is filled with archetypes for, quote, great holding still and, quote, no movement throughout the system/lands. I'll read that again. The immediacy data is filled with archetypes for, quote, great holding still and, quote, no movement throughout the system/lands. Further, the imagery includes modifying aspect attribute sets for, quote, rigidity, which is related to, quote, brittleness, and, quote, desperation at deep archetype levels. All right, Cliff, those are some pretty powerful words which all point to the same general kind of paradigm.
They do. And actually, if you sort of have to understand that we fill in, of course, most of the articles and the, as you say, the narrative around them, but they still sort of make sense even if just presented in and of themselves.
Well,
that's how we come up with the idea for what we're spreading out there.
Let's do that. We'll just take the words from the research and I'll string them together. Desperate hands, grip, markets, seizure. Grasp and closure restrictions. Restrictions on movement. Great holding still. No movement throughout the system lands. Rigidity. Brittleness. Desperation. All right, do those words have a certain synthesis that you can see? I think they do.
Yeah. And, of course, we're dealing with archetypes, which arise from very complex symbology, which is really a grouping of all different kinds of words around central concepts. And archetypes are frequently cross-cultural. We'll find the same kind of archetypes no matter what your cultural paradigm.
Oh, interesting.
So, for instance, we have the same associations with word groups in Hindus as we do with the Russians, as we do with ourselves. And so we're able to pick this out from multiple different viewpoints. And it does not sound good.
That doesn't sound good at all.
No, the situation we have now is is basically, as we say around here, it's already baked in the pie. The actual...
You would bring up pies.
Yes, I would, of course. I can't help it. Pies are good. They're an antidote to what we have to go through in the future. They're simple. They're not fancy as cake. There's all kinds of archetypes.
No, we like
pies.
So, yeah, absolutely.
But we get into a situation here where the actual reality manifesting around us is so bizarre that our stuff is now becoming tame by comparison. Because here we have a situation where Bernanke gets up there and says that we've essentially created more money in the bailouts than has ever existed on the planet before. no, we're not running the printing presses 24 hours a day, which is true. They're just making digits move. So
they
it
don't
takes about 2
print
minutes.
anything. It's one guy with a computer keyboard. Yeah.
Exactly. And now he's saying that all of that is sanitized, so we have no inflation worries. Okay, well, something there does not compute. So
well,
in Bizarro land...
Excuse me?
Now,
yeah.
Yeah, I say it now makes sense that some of the situations we're seeing are indeed baked in the pie. There's no way we can get out of it. Once they put that money into the system, they started a chain of events that we all have to live through. And this is also something that Biden is referring to within the austerity. And they have no idea. Notice, too, the words that he used. Those are not ill-chosen. It is not Biden the babbler. Okay, he has certain key words and certain archetypes that had to come across in his statement. And look at how many of the words he used have at their core fit into what we had previously described some months back as epic.
True.
And
well, I still think he's a babbler, but I think your point is extremely well taken and correct.
And
those words did not just accidentally appear, although he does flap his gums a lot.
Yes, but those words were put into that brain to come out of those gums by someone or something or the universe under certain circumstances, and we're finding that they're fitting within the epic archetype because they're now they're girding their loins, they're getting ready for this epic battle because basically that's what's going to come down to.
Well, he's calling out Homer and all kinds
exactly, referring back to archetypes that are so deep within the, quote, Western world, and especially within the Eastern establishment, and those who have been schooled by them. I had the fortune or ill fortune to have some of my schooling be under a classic British tradition, so I have a certain amount of that perspective available to me. And I instantly notice when they start using these hot-button words that are common throughout the Ivy League schools, through their secret society networks, all the way back through to the British school structure and then over into the German school structure. And when they start getting into these levels, they are not kidding. These are very serious archetypes for them, and that's how they express rather than use superlatives.
All right, very good. We're focusing even more firmly on Biden now. This is good. All right, here's the next graph I'll do. The primary accretion patterns are still within the larger descriptor range for, quote, epic and, quote, monumental, as applied to our current period of release language, which again appears to reach to February the 19th, and from there slowly fade out through to about mid-March. The, quote, epic and, quote, monumental linguistic sets have not yet been fulfilled. Okay, did you follow that? The epic and monumental linguistic sets have, as of right now, not yet been fulfilled. They are lacking many key descriptors in spite of recent events of globe-altering nature within the, quote, currencies. Much remains to be revealed. So we haven't seen the big one yet, and there may be multiple big ones.
We're going to get to a couple of nice little slides here. If we're correct, we're going to reach a period here on, say, October 22nd or 23rd that'll extend out to about maybe the 14th or 15th or 16th of November, in which we're going to have restrictions clamped down on the language that can be shoveled out about what's going on. And then everything's going to start breaking loose again around the 20th or to the 24th of November. And that's when it gets real serious. That's when manifestation is something everybody's going to understand. That's when the crack noise will be heard.
Gee.
Aren't I fun? Yes. But I have some pretty good pie recipes.
Maybe a thin Thanksgiving table for some people.
Oh, extremely so. It's quite horrific. We should not minimize that. I have to try and be upbeat, and I have a tendency to be a mischievous fellow in any event, but we cannot minimize the amount of suffering that's coming. It's going to be epic.
I agree. Save every penny you can, folks. We'll be back, and we'll read more excerpts from Part 6 of the current Alta Report, and I would encourage all of you to consider subscribing to George and Clif's really fascinating work. Be right back. And welcome back. Glad you're all along tonight. Thank you for your time and your attention. We think this is extremely valuable and important information, or we wouldn't be here. Neither would Clif or his partner George, who is hopefully listening in tonight. Clif High's software again goes out and scours the internet. How many operations are mounted, so to speak? How many spiders go out? How many words are?
Well, we've got a number of servers running continuous GET commands against web pages all over, and so we'll pull in maybe 120, 130 million reads. Each read is meaning that we found a keyword system, one of 30 or 40,000 that we start off with, and then it brings back associated words around it. We'll throw about 30 to 40 million of those away just because they reference conscious thoughts about our subject, and we're not after that. We're after the archetypes.
It's like someone saying, I predict or I think this is going to happen.
Correct.
We're not looking. It's like remote viewing. You're not looking for the ego or the
got to get the mind out of the way. The mind is trash.
Perfect. Yeah. That's the block. That's the block. All right. We're going to carry on with this. I'm going to read another segment. I'll note